Hello and welcome to another round of Championship predictions from the On Sport Podcast. I'm Craig Savage, and with me, as always, is Mr. Daniel Cody. Let's have a quick recap of what happened in midweek, and it was a pretty good midweek in terms of predictions. 3 correct score lines to Daniel Cody's 2. There was one game postponed in that as well, with Swansea v Bournemouth being called off because of the weather. And overall, there were 8 2-1s out of 11 on midweek. So it was a very tight affair and a lot of late goals. But as you can see, overall, I win by 11 points to 9. So let's start off with the first game on Saturday. It is Blackburn Rovers versus Queen's Park Rangers. As I said, both these teams had late goals in them. Blackburn lost late on to Sheffield United, and QPR beat Blackpool 2-1. So Blackburn on that decline again. This is 2 teams in the playoffs. Blackburn have got to be careful now because teams are behind them are catching up.
Yeah, and I think they set a club record 5 games without scoring in a row, starting obviously at Luton and carrying on to Sheffield United. And it's striking a resemblance to what we saw last year, Craig. I know they weren't as high at the start there, but they got to this stage of the season and the results turned and they were awful towards the end. And it's such a shame because they've been in a great position. I will say, I know that Sheffield United scored the late winner against them despite having 10 men, but Billy Sharp had a great chance in the first half. They should have won the game comfortably. Blackburn, they weren't really in it too often. QPR, the opposite of that, won in spite of 10 men against Blackpool with a late goal. I think that's a really crucial result because they were similarly declining like Blackburn. They'd been 4 without a win before it. I think that'll really boost the confidence. If it hadn't been for that late goal, I wouldn't have had a clue what to predict this weekend, but because of it, I'm going to go for a tight game. Blackburn have to score eventually, so I'm going to stick with a 2-1 theme, 2-1 to QPR.
I'm going to go for was previously the Championship's favourite scoreline, has now been taken over by Daniel Cody's pick of the Championship favourite scoreline of 2-1. No, I'm going to go 1-1. Blackburn have got to find a way to obviously get over the line and 2 to score. Conceding late on, it's been a horrible month for them in terms of fixtures. We did say that at the start of the month. QPR what they normally do. They get a winner late on. Yeah, that was a bit of a crucial win because they lost the last 2. So I'm going to go 1-1. It's going to be a very tight game. Right, next up, it is Barnsley. They're at home to Middlesbrough. Barnsley with a very good 2-0 away victory at Hull. And Middlesbrough, 2 late goals. Done the job against West Brom.
Yeah, really important win again in that playoff mix. They've kept themselves in momentum. I think it was important after the Bristol City game that they got back to winning ways, and they managed to do so. They look a great side at home, but they've struggled a little bit away from home. Obviously, a draw against QPR, that defeat against Bristol City. They've not been quite as strong on the road. They're actually in the bottom half for their away record over the course of the season. And Barnsley, what a win. What a crucial win. It's starting to hot up down there. You've got 1 point separating the bottom 3, but someone's going to have to go on a massive run to survive. And you do wonder if now has got to be the time for Barnsley. I know this is utterly ridiculous as I'm predicting it because Middlesbrough always score. Oh, no, I'm going to bottle it. Sorry, Championship's favourite scoreline. I don't fancy Borough on the road at the minute.
I do by 3-1. Barnsley, I thought Barnsley were excellent in that first half. It's probably the best first half I've seen all season from Barnsley. Middlesbrough, once again, I don't know what is on the Wilder, but they seem to score late goals at home. I know it's West Brom, and West Brom are in that 4, but they obviously coming from behind. They have to find a way to get over that line. But I'm going to go confident on Middlesbrough this week. I think Barnsley will put up a fight. I think it's going to be 2 late goals for Middlesbrough, but 3-1. Right, next up at St Andrews, it is Birmingham versus Huddersfield. Birmingham lost 2-1 away at Reading, but Huddersfield scored 2 late goals to beat Cardiff.
They just produce the goods every time. Late show with 5 minutes to go, you thought, maybe the tide's just starting to turn, and they've done it again. They're 2 points off second. I know they've played more games than anyone else up there, but it's a ridiculous effort, really. And I say that, they're only 10 points away from the bottom half, as is the nature of the Championship, but still, they're in great form. They're still very solid at the back. And after that euphoric high and the effort put in against Fulham to manage to get the victory again by whatever means, it's fantastic. Birmingham, it just looked like it was starting to turn. And then I know there was a new manager bounce on the other side of the dugout, but still, it's a really disappointing defeat. And they did have more chances. On another day, they might have won. But still defensively a little bit fragile. We've got to bear in mind there's probably going to be more protests, more interruption to the game. Is that going to affect Huddersfield? I don't think it is. I'm going for a Huddersfield win. I'm tempted to stick with a 2-1 theme again, but I think there'll be more goals in this one. I'm going to go wild game, 4-2 Huddersfield. Wild.
I don't think it'd be as wild. I'm going totally opposite way. I'm going to go by the odd goal for Huddersfield. I think Huddersfield do have that tendency to defend really well. On the footballing side, Birmingham really let me down at midweek, made us look silly with Paulins winning at Reading. Huddersfield to win 1-0 at St Andrews. Right, next up, it is the Paul Ince derby. It is Blackpool versus Reading. Blackpool lost late up 2-1 to QPR. Reading made us look silly, winning 2-1 against Birmingham. So it's a very good start for Paul Ince.
It was. I will just say that if you look at the match stats, if you look at some of the chances, on another day it could have been the opposite score. But we've said this for a long time. When Reading have got their first 11 fit, there's no surprises in the two players that scored, Lucas João and John Swift. They're going to be a different side. And the turn in momentum had already started with the win against Preston and even the clean sheet against Peterborough the midweek before. So I'm not entirely surprised that bounce has carried on, but I don't think it will last too long. Blackpool, rock solid sides. They had a disappointment at the end against QPR. But look, the only games they've been losing recently against QPR and Bournemouth, who are two of the top three. Otherwise, they're always picking up odd points. Away from home, you'd be a shoo-in for 1-1. But at home, I think they're going to win this game. We'll start to see the panic again from Reading, particularly if one or two of the sides below pick up points. I'm going to go for 3-1 to Blackpool because they beat Bristol City by the same. And Reading are just as bad, if not even worse, at the back.
I think Blackpool might sneak it. I think if Reading picked up any injuries from midweek, because they are down to the bare bones again, they will have problems. Great 2 wins. It's been a great week so far for Reading. They were crucial wins as well because Derby obviously picked up a win. Barnsley picked up a win as well. It's going to be really tight for me. Blackpool do tend to be obviously better at home. Josh Barlow's on form. I'm going to go 2-1 to Blackpool in this game. It's going to be ridiculously tight. We'll see how one goes. Right, next up, it's Bournemouth. They're at home to Stoke City at the Vitality. Bournemouth haven't played at all this week because both their games have been called off. Stoke lost 2-1 to Luton. Let's talk about Stoke. Stoke were really, really bad.
Yeah, I mean, the first half was just a terrible game. Second half, I mean, you said it before we came on air here. They got Michael O'Neill, and that's probably the saddest part. And after signs of encouragement in recent weeks, it's now 2 goals conceded, 3 games in a row. It's 3 games without a victory and 2 disappointing home results in a row. I actually think they'll probably be glad to go on the road for this one. Bournemouth, ironically, probably the only side in the league that are not quite as strong at home as they are away from home. And they've got a lot of catching up to do. They've played the least games in the league. And yes, they're 2 points clear in second place, but there is a lot of pressure mounting behind now. So I wonder what their reaction's going to be. With Bournemouth, you always get either a comfortable win, like against Birmingham, for example, or you get that odd, silly game, like at home to Hull, even at home to Boreham Wood in the Cup. And I don't know which one we're going to get. Everyone's going to be predicting a Bournemouth win. And as I mentioned last week, we're in silly season of the Championship now. Everything unpredictable happens. I think Stoke are going to nick it. Bournemouth not playing for so long is going to play against them. I'm going to go 2-1 to Stoke. I've just got a hunch on this one, Craig. I've just got a hunch. And generally, they've worked for me this season.
No, just no for me. Bournemouth are going to win 2-0. The Stoke's defeat on Wednesday, it was only 1 win in 8 at home. Crowds turning on the back. It felt quite early on that crowds turned on their back on the players. I just didn't know what this Stoke side, because early in the season, they looked pretty good. I think one of the last few against Stoke was that 2-2 draw against Forest, and they were pretty good that day. They can do it, but I can't see them progressing. I think they're going to be mid-table now for the rest of the season, me Stoke. But that's why they're going to lose 2-0. Right, next up, Cardiff versus Fulham at the Cardiff City Stadium. Cardiff lost late on to Huddersfield, and Fulham won 2-1 at home. Mitrovic breaking the record.
Yeah, 33 league goals in 32 games. It's absolutely insane, isn't it? I think he's going to break 40. I'll be honest with you now. The one thing I've got to say is I know it wasn't a brilliant performance, but it was important they bounced back after the Huddersfield game. And look, while all the other teams have slipped up and gone on 5 games without winning, 4 without scoring, Fulham have just kept ticking over and winning 3/4 of their games. And that's all you can ask for them. The only thing I want to factor into this, because at the moment, people are talking about Fulham, they're already up. It's an unassailable lead. They've played 18 home games, only 5 left, and 14 away. So they've still got 9 away games to go. And I just wonder if that's going to play a little bit of an impact towards the end of the season, because I know they've been good away from home this year, but you'd like to have more home games when you're coming towards the end and trying to get over the line. So I don't know if that's going to have an impact. Cardiff are not great at home generally, but under Steve Morrison and in the last few games, they've produced much better performances. The only scoreline that no one would predict in this is a draw. So as you can tell, I'm in a ridiculous mood this weekend. So I'm going to go for 2-2. I think it's going to be a good game. And I think Cardiff might nick something because Fulham haven't been great in recent weeks.
You didn't say Fulham have been great. They just get over the line. They don't have to. I think they're at a stage of the season where they don't have to go gun-ho. Where I know they scored 6-7 goals. They're getting over the line. They could easily have got more than 2 against Peterborough. Let's be brutally honest. And they just got a bit complacent right at the end and let Peterborough score. So, obviously, yes, they deserve to win at midweek. Cardiff, I thought Cardiff were excellent for 80 minutes and then just stopped. But I don't know if they thought the game was done. I think it was a great away win at Huddersfield. Not many teams have won that at Huddersfield. Thought it was going to be perfect. And they shot themselves in the foot, really. So they were real hard done by on that. I'm going to go Fulham to win by 2-0. Right, next up is Coventry. They're at home to Preston. Coventry won late on again, and Preston drew 0-0 with Nottingham Forest. So the only game that was goalless.
It was a good point. I actually watched this game on a Tuesday night. It was the one I picked. It was a pretty unfortunate draw for Preston. I thought they were the better side. They were the side pushing on towards the end, and there was a large spell where they had Nottingham Forest under sustained pressure. I mean, they had double the shot count, double the on target. They even had a bit more of a possession, which is unlike them. Cameron Archer missed one great opportunity. They should have nicked it with that. Very similar to the one Billy Sharp missed for Sheffield United last night. But overall, after that shambolic defensive display against Reading, great to get back to the clean sheets, great to get back to defensive sternness and have a little bit of a threat too. But we all know where they need to improve in the summer. Coventry, it went from my perfect score to yours in the 89th minute. Gyökeres did it again. And look, it's a win. And Coventry, we started to write them off. We started to think, are they dropping out of it? That's 3 wins in 4 now, 2 of them away from home, and they're only 3 points off the playoffs. So suddenly Coventry are back in the mix. I think this is going to be a wonderful finish to the season. But again, is the pressure on now? I think this is going to be one of the lowest scoring games of the weekend. I'm going to go for 0-0.
I'm going to go 2-1 Coventry. I think they might do it again. I might think they do it late on. Yeah, obviously Coventry winning late on at Bristol City. Another away win. Another late goal. I don't think there's any. You said, is there pressure? There is no pressure. Coventry, Luton, no pressure at all. Just carry on what you're doing. Just literally carry on. It's more pressure on the bigger teams. Pressure on Bournemouth. Pressure on Blackburn. Teams. I'm not going to say that. I don't like saying it. Teams like Luton and Coventry and Huddersfield in the way have got no pressure at all. So they just got to keep doing what they've got to do. Preston, yeah, good point for me. I thought worked hard, but I'm not sure about this game, so I'm just going to lose just by 2-1. Right, next up at Kennel Friday, it's Luton Town versus Derby County. Luton won 2-1 away at Stoke. Derby lost 2-1 to Millwall. It has been a pretty bad week with teams around them picking up points.
Yeah, there's that little 8-point gap now to Reading, and I'm starting to worry about them. More for the side they had to put out. There were so many youthful players in the team against Millwall. Although it did look a little bit like Wayne Rooney was maybe rotating and looking at the weekend as a better chance to get a result. I don't know, because the way that Derby play going forward, it could be a threat against Luton. Luton were magnificent against Stoke in the second half. The first half was a terrible game, as I mentioned earlier. But basically, we saw something I've never seen from this team before, which is didn't play with a midfield, put everyone who was 6 foot plus in the team, bar Alan Campbell, and just tried to out-physical them. And it worked eventually. So I was as surprised as anyone we won that. It's weird because at the start of the week, if you'd have said Luton would get 7 points out of this week, you'd be absolutely thrilled. But if they draw this game, you're going to be really disappointed now. So I don't know what to go for. My head's telling me they're going to sneak it by 2-1 and that they'll play some of the shorter, quicker strikers. But then Chelsea on Wednesday, it's going to be in some people's heads. So 2-1 Luton, but it's not a confident 2-1.
I don't know. It took me forever to get the Luton scoreline from Wednesday for last midweek. Yeah, Luton were excellent. I was really happy with that. Really happy with Hilton. Took his goal very well. I thought Luton were defensively sound as well. Stoke didn't recreate much, as I said earlier. I think Nathan Jones said it in his post-match interview. Luton could have easily had 4. Yeah, Derby had about a bad week, let's be brutally honest. They did miss Tom Lawrence badly. A little bit of creativity. Getting into this game, I do expect Luton to make a couple of changes. I'm going to go 1-0 to Luton. Right, next up, it's Millwall versus Sheffield United. Millwall won 2-1 at Derby, and Sheffield United won 1-0 against Blackburn. 3 straight wins now from Millwall, and I did say that inconsistency, and that has been consistent at winning games.
Yeah, it's almost 2 of the form teams in the division here, isn't it? Because Millwall, I mean, even if you go back to the last 6, they've won 4. The only game they lost was against Fulham. They've been in fantastic form, really. Sheffield United are flying 5 games in a row without conceding. Should have won by more. I know they had the red card, but as I said earlier, Billy Sharp missed an absolute sitter. You would have put your house on him scoring. Sander Berger came back into the starting lineup and I thought looked really accomplished, particularly in the first half too. So there's some really positive signs at Sheffield United. And unless the form ends soon, I think one of the few manager specials we're going to have to eat our words on is Paul Heckingbottom. I think he's doing a fabulous job, to be fair to him. Millwall, really solid, ticking along, but you always know there's an absolute clang around the corner, don't you? And that's the issue at the minute. So Sheffield United, one of the strongest teams away in the league. Millwall, a mixed bag throughout the season. I'm going to go for Sheffield United just 1-0.
It's the old classic Neil Warnock special. You're going to see that on Twitter over Saturday. We're in London. I'm going to go with the same scoreline that happened on that day when Warnock was in London for Sheffield United v Millwall. I'm going to go by 2-1 for Sheffield United. They will concede. Lost Charlie Good. He's suspended. That's the only negative I got for Sheffield United. Obviously, keeping the clean sheets. They did save a penalty as well. So that record could have been gone. Millwall, excellent last week or so. Really carrying on their streak. Yeah, it's 2-1 Sheffield United. It's going to be a really tight game. These fixtures are really tight this week, I have to be honest. Right, next up, it's Nottingham Forest versus Bristol City. Forest drew 0-0 with Preston, and Bristol City concede late again to Coventry City. So why do they keep doing this, Bristol City?
I don't know. And it keeps costing me points, which is even more annoying. But just as we thought, the home form had turned. I think it was 4 home wins in a row before that. And just out of nowhere. And it was an even game. There wasn't much in it. A draw would have been a fair result. But you can't call it luck when you keep conceding late goals. It's happened countless times. And there's a problem there. Away from home, they've been awful probably since the first 5 or 6 weeks of the season. They've now got racked up 10 defeats on the road, which is the joint third most in the Championship. They've let in 38 goals on the road, only worse by Peterborough. And Nottingham Forest, I know I mentioned that Preston dominated and they were really poor in midweek Forest, but they ground out a point. And when you're in that sort of promotion race and a playoff race, that's what you've got to do. They are slipping a little bit now, down to 10th. They need to get a win after back-to-back draws. If they're at their best, they will beat Bristol City at a canter because defensively on the road, they're awful. 3-1 because Bristol City have been scoring goals in every game recently.
I don't understand Bristol City's mentality of conceding late goals. I just think that they get through to 85 minutes and then think it's done.
Is it fitness?
Could be fitness, could be mentality thing. I just don't know. And I know we're going to get pelters in the comments again, but they haven't rectified that problem. And I think we said this back when Luton drew 1-1 back in September, October. They haven't rectified it. So I don't think there'll be a manager special. I don't think he'll be the next manager special. I'll be honest. I think they'll keep him to the summer and then see what happens there. And depending on off the field problems, we'll wait and see. Forest, good point. Even I said Preston had a good point. It's still a good point, really. Keeping the clean sheet without their main goalkeeper. Forest seem to be better at home under Steve Cooper. So I'm going to go Forest to win by 2-0. Right, 2 games to go, and this is a doozy. It is the Grant McCann derby. It's Peterborough United versus Hull. Please check out our thoughts on the return of Grant McCann in the eye above. But his first game is against Hull City, and he knows his players.
You couldn't write it. It is against a Hull team that we praised for their defensive efforts against 3 of the top 6 in recent weeks. They were awful against Barnsley defensively. Some poor goals. They gave up some other poor chances too. And Peterborough need to turn a corner. They have been a bit better defensively recently. And by the way, under Everington in midweek, they put up a decent effort against Fulham. It was a better performance than we expected. I've got a feeling they're going to win this, because the new manager bounce is live at most clubs. And Hull, they had a new owner bounce, but there's no signs that they've got any better going forward under Shota Arveladze, and there's no signs that any of the attacking reinforcements that have come in have been able to improve their front line. And Peterborough at home, we know if they're going to stay up this season, they've got to win their home games. They've got to keep clean sheets. Grant McCann was accused of being a bit too defensive, and that was his reason for not being the progressive manager Hull needed. And I think just as a perfect carrot to that, Peterborough are going to win 1-0.
I'm going to sit on the fence and say 1-1. I think Peterborough will score. I thought Wednesday was a free hit, considering the news that Darren Ferguson resigned on the Sunday. That hurt them more, losing last week to Derby, than it was for Fulham. Because Fulham was always, you knew Fulham was going to win. To come out with that 2-1 gives a little bit of hope. And to obviously score late on does give a little bit of hope. Grant McCann was in the stands. He probably would see that as a positive. But Hull, I think all that hype with the new owner, and we were so pleased that they got rid of the previous one, just had a little bit of gloss. And I think now it's starting to come back out again. The same thing under Grant McCann before he won the last 2 games before the ownership took over. So I'm not really convinced on either game. Either team to really take it by the scruff of the neck. People have got to do it more to get out of there. And close that gap to a Hull at least, and to Reading. But I don't think it will happen. So I'm going to go 1-1. And the final game is on Monday. It is West Bromwich Albion versus Swansea. Swansea didn't play because it was the bad weather that caused some damage to their ground. And West Brom lost again. But it was a positive. They scored. They
did score. And I want to flip the Fulham stat I gave you earlier, because West Brom have played 18 games on the road and only 15 at home. So if he can get it going, Steve Bruce, he's got 8 home games, a chance to get 24 points. And if they get into the mid-70s, they'll be in the playoffs. So his first home game was a 0-0 draw against Blackburn, which isn't the worst result in the world. They've ended that goal-scoring problem now. And I know it was still a defeat against Middlesbrough, but if ever there's a game to turn it around, and you've talked about why countless times on the road, it's against Swansea. They were terrible against Sheffield United, terrible against Stoke, poor against Hull City even the game before that. 3 away defeats in a row, conceding 9 goals. They've got the 4th worst away record, in the Championship, and a terrible defensive record with it. I think West Brom have to win. They can't keep losing forever. They're a good side with good players. They're still only 7 points off the playoffs. I'm going to get them to win 2-0 comfortably. Swansea, I worry about them on the road. I don't see how they win any away game.
I can't understand West Brom, because I've read comments this is the worst West Brom side they've seen. Obviously, that was after the Luton game. But them taking the lead is probably a little bit positive. But the goals they conceded, though, were so bad. You still have to question that. There apparently was some... I don't know if you noticed it when you was at the game last week, which we didn't cover, that Bartley and Malumbi had a little bit of a scuffle after the second goal.
Didn't notice.
But I think that's why Bartley got booked. Them two had it a bit of words. So all is not right at West Brom. Steve Bruce has got a very tough job, and Steve Bruce needs to get to the end of the season just to have a major clear out. I don't think they're going to make the playoffs now. Swansea, they just frustrate me now. It's going to be physical. Again, West Brom will be direct, a little bit physical against Swansea who want to play on the floor. I think Steve Bruce will actually win this game if they press Swansea quite high up, like they did against Luton that first half, where Luton caused mistakes. They can win the game. So I'm going to go by a 1-0. No, I'm not. I'm going to go 2-1 because West Brom will concede. Let's have a quick recap what we have predicted this weekend. I've only had one team to score more than 2, which is Middlesbrough, considering no team scored more than 2 last midweek. And Daniel Cody's gone for a wild Huddersfield 4-2 win at Birmingham, a convincing 3-1 win for Blackpool against Reading, and a convincing win for Forest against Bristol City. And those are our predictions for this weekend's action in the Championship. Do you agree with us or disagree with us? Let us know in the comments section and give us your prediction for this weekend's action. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the Honest Football Podcast, and you can follow us on Twitter at HonestFootball3.